Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dagmai Babi podcast. Today we have Thomas with us. He is Svelte's ambassador. He is the creator of MeltUI and a bunch of other amazing projects. We're very thrilled to have him here. I'm very excited that he agreed to be on my show. Welcome to the podcast, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm also excited.
All right, all right. So I might have mentioned on my text that I live in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So it's in the East African region of Africa. Have you ever been to this continent, to this country, or to this city?
I have not. No, I've never been to the continent either. My parents have like a long time ago, but I have not.
Okay, okay. Do you do any traveling?
I do. I do. So just a little background. I currently live in Portugal, but I used to live, I was born in Switzerland. I moved to Brazil and lived there let's say 17 years before moving here. And here I do a lot of traveling like to other European countries just because it's easy and cheap to do so, like compared to like when I lived in Brazil, to go anywhere it was really expensive. And now here it's much cheaper to go like nearby places. Me and my friends are just talking about like going to France for like 30 euros for the trip, like the plane tickets, because of a discount. So yeah, it's much cheaper.
Oh, that's actually really cool. All right, so let's start by, I guess, would you like to introduce yourself? That would be amazing. Would you like to tell the community here who you are, how old you are, where you live, and what you do? Just the overview of things.
Yeah, for sure. So as Dagmar said, my name is Thomas. I am a front-end developer. By profession, but I also like to dabble in other stuff in my free time, not so much these days. I've been coding since I was 16. I started coding in high school, started learning how to code by my own just for a little bit of fun, but I also figured I wanted to do that for a living. So I started reading up on some Python books, took it up from there, started front-end in college because no one wanted to do pretty things. People wanted to do pretty things, but no one wanted to touch CSS and stuff like that. And I really wanted to do some pretty visuals for like our group work. So I said, okay, let's learn CSS. And I actually liked it by my surprise and just stuck with it, started joining some companies and stuff like that. And I've always liked doing like little side projects, little hobbies, things like that. And I dropped out of college I didn't actually drop out. When I moved from Brazil to Portugal, I just stopped going to college and did not attend a college here in Portugal. And I figured, hey, I want to do something to showcase like in my portfolio and things like that, my CV, that since I don't want to go to college again. So I started sharing some personal projects on Twitter, just some ideas, played with some AI stuff, played with some like visual stuff until I started first Radix Svelte, which was a port from the popular React library Radix. That did not work out quite so well. And so a little later, Radix Svelte became MeltUI, one of the biggest UI libraries for Svelte. And as Dagmar said, I also became a Svelte ambassador later, which just means I'm really active in the community and I have a special shiny name in the Discord server. That's mostly it. Yeah.
All right. That's a wonderful introduction. All right, let's go way back and let's talk about your your upbringings, your childhood and all of that. Where were you born? I'm pretty curious.
Yeah, I was born in Switzerland, in Geneva.
Wow. Okay. Was there anyone techie, did anyone influence you to code, to anything technical, I guess?
Yes and no. So my dad used to program, used to code games to sell when he was younger, but he's a finance guy now. So he never introduced me to coding, but he used to, which is funny. So I started coding on my own just because I always was interested in tech because of games. I'm a big gamer. And yeah, that came naturally. And I only found out later that he used like code games, and then we talked a little bit about programming, but it has been ages since he hasn't coded. And my mom was an interior designer and also like French teacher, so nothing techy on her side.
Wow, okay. How did you, get started then? How old were you when you started coding? What was your first programming language?
So me and my sister, I have an older sister, Ines. Me and Ines, we wanted to start coding just because like we thought it was fun. Like, hey, let's do our own websites. We were really active like on the internet and on computers and games. Like, how do we learn how to code? And we have heard of like HTML. So we would just like spin up, was it W3 or something like that? Just started trying to learn basic HTML and stuff, but never stuck with it too much. The time I really got into it was when I was 16 in high school and grabbed a Python book. I went to Reddit at Learn Programming, like, how do I learn code? What do I do? And people say, hey, grab a book. I'm like, okay, what are some good Python books? I heard Python in school. And I started reading a book called Thinking Like a Computer Scientist with Python Free. It's a really, really good book. I really like it.
I guess you started with Python and you just started coding and programming. Did you do any games? What were the projects you were building back then?
So most of them were just like the books had some exercises. Like for example, in Python, there's a library called Turtles, which just allows you to draw lines and stuff like that. And so I played with some of that outside of the exercise. It was just depending on the module of the book, I would play around them. But some interesting projects I did outside of them. I did some smallish games just for fun. Python has like something called Pygame. One of them that's funny is at the time, my sister had just started dating this guy, which they dated for years later. And it was a tough time for him to get her to date her. So I made a little game in Python where your cursor would be him and my sister would be jumping around on the screen. And you would have to try and catch her, per se. And when you reach her, he would say, oh, do you want to be my girlfriend? And she would say, no. I even made them record the voice lines and everything. But the more practical one, I would say, and a little naughty, was at my school, every week we had to do like some exercises and they were graded. But they were like A, B, C, and D questions, right? You didn't write down the questions. You just had to jot down which one of the alternatives was the correct one. And after the week had passed, you could see the answers on the website. But I discovered that the answers were always there. If you viewed the page source code, it was always there. They were just hidden with like CSS and stuff like that. But there was like an attribute showing what the correct answer was on the HTML and stuff. So I made a Python script that I would just say which week it was, and it would give me all the answers for the homeworks week. I don't recommend, but I did it.
Okay, outside of programming and work, what do you do? What do you normally do? You mentioned that you're a big gamer, and what games do you like? What other activities do you do?
Yeah, what games do I like? I'm really eclectic. I like all sorts of games. I normally like single player games more. I really like indie games a lot. I like high-paced games. I like hard games, I would say. I like challenging games. I really like to challenge myself. So I'm a big fan of the Souls series, like Dark Souls and stuff like that. But I also like indie games, like really hectic, fast-paced games. That really makes my blood rush, and I like it. And I also like playing the guitar. I'm a big metal fan, like going to metal concerts and stuff. And I have guitars as well, so I like to play them.
Okay.
And that's mostly it. And just like spending time with my girlfriend. I have 2 cats as well, just watching movies, TVs. I am a big movie fan as well.
Okay, that's very interesting, actually. That's pretty fun. I didn't know that you played the guitar, actually. I play a little bit of the guitar, but I'm not that great. I'm very tempted to ask you to play for us, but that's not, I guess.
I mean, that could be a whole setup, but maybe. Let's see.
We'll think about it for some other day, I guess. What about your personal life, your spirituality, faith, religion, and topics like that? Are you a Christian or other beliefs? Can you tell me about that part of your life?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not a faithful person per se, but I'm not an atheist either. I am an agnostic person. I believe that there's no way you can know about like what's going on out there, but I'm really curious about it. I'm big into like philosophy and existentialism. It keeps me awake at night, let's say. It's a scary topic, but it's something I'm always curious about. My mom is a I don't know how you say this in English, but she's like a, I would say in Portuguese like espírita, which would loosely translate to spiritist. I don't know the exact name of her religion. While my dad is more Catholic. I was, but they were never too how pushy on their faith. Like I was raised, I was baptized and stuff like that, but we never were like a church going family or things like that. It wasn't super traditional. So yeah, I kind of grew up with like two different religions. I had a friend who was a Buddhist, Buddhist. I don't know how to pronounce that. And I've went to the temple a few times. I like knowing different religions, right? I like to get to know them, but I don't practice it on my own because I don't particularly believe in anything. But I don't believe that they don't exist. I just don't know.
Okay. Okay. I can understand that. Okay, let's move on to your I guess your career life. What was the first job you did, and what was the first programming job you had?
So, strictly saying, my first job wasn't programming, but it wasn't exactly a job. I was helping my mom. As I said, she was an interior designer, and she had her own store, her own place, and she needed some help. So for a while, she even gave me like a little salary, and I helped her a little bit. It was really simple stuff like administrative stuff, like Excel and stuff like that. Also, like handing out flyers and things like that, putting them in mailboxes, but that was for a short period of time. Then my next job was programming itself. It was kind of like a freelance thing for a company called Social Rocket, which no longer exists. It was just like social media stuff, like social media automation. And what I did was I was kind of a full stack, so I was helping them on their web platform itself.
All right. So how did you discover Svelte? And did you use other frameworks before Svelte?
Okay, so how did I discover Svelte? That's a good question. I don't remember. I guess I've always been curious about like other frameworks and things like that. I just love experimenting with them. Even though Svelte is my preferred framework of choice, I do like still using other ones to like try them out. So I guess it just started like getting talked about like during Svelte free. It got a little bit more popular. Videos popping up like, hey, this is really succinct and nice and things like that. I think this was when I was on my second company. So maybe in 2020, 2021, something like that. Maybe that's when I heard it or started using it. Before that, like my first framework was Vue. I used it because, okay, I'm a bit of a rambler, just as a side note. You ask me one thing and I'll start bringing up 10 stories. But
It's fine. Have fun. Have fun.
when I was interviewing for my first company, they asked me a technical challenge, right? And so I was like, okay, people use JavaScript frameworks. Let's learn one. React seemed too daunting, seemed too hard. So I went, okay, Vue seems easier. I don't know if Svelte was already in Svelte free. This was 2018 or 2019, something like that. And yeah, I started with Vue, and I got in, but they used React there. They used React, not even with TypeScript at the time because it wasn't that used. And yeah, so most of my work experience has been with React. And then at the second company I joined here in Portugal, because I'm not counting the freelance one, Social Rocket. The second one I joined, my boss, the founder of the company, he also liked Svelte, and I started trying it out. I even wrote my portfolio in Sepper before SvelteKit was a thing for a while. So I tried it out a little bit. There were some things I did not like. For example, it did not have TypeScript support, if I'm not mistaken, or it was kind of iffy. And Sepper was still like a little bit in beta. So yeah, but I really liked Svelte. But I was also starting to get enamored with TypeScript and stuff like that. So yeah, it took me a while. I stuck through Next.js for a bit. I loved Next.js, and now I don't like it as much. And now I really like Svelte and SvelteKit. And now my portfolio is not in SvelteKit. I would say it was, and now it's in Astro and Svelte. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, what year was this when you discovered Svelte?
So I guess if I had to guess, it would be 2020 or 2021, maybe.
Okay. Okay. So after you discovered Svelte, I guess what was the major project you built?
With Svelte, maybe some internal stuff actually for the company. because I have done I did my portfolio, I did some things, but we experimented with like design system, like trying to do a design system and a component library, an internal component library in Svelte, which we had some trouble with at the time. Um, Maybe that, but just like small personal projects. It took me a while until I did like something bigger with Svelte. Maybe the one I did that got a little bit more attention was CodeVerter, which was just I wanted to try out AI and how to use it with like how do I use the OpenAI API, because at the time it was only OpenAI. And yeah, it was just a tool like you put in your code and then hey, you convert the code to like another language or something like that or another framework. But in the end, I was just calling OpenAI API like a lot of apps do.
What do you love so much about Svelte?
Okay, I feel like I don't know, it's really easy to express myself with it, right? Like, okay, I have these ideas in my mind, I need to code in it. It's the fastest way for me to do it. Um, so in coding web applications, we need markup, style, and JavaScript. I like the single file component structure because of that, right? Where in React, like you have CSS modules and stuff like that, but it's a little bit more complicated. Second, I like the performance as well, so I need to worry less with Svelte. Now, why do I like Svelte, for example, over Vue? One thing that initially frustrated me about Svelte, and now I love it, is the tight design choices. One example is in Svelte, it's a little bit tougher to use scope styles on child components, right? You need to use like a global selector or something like that. While with Vue, it's really simple. It's just a class. And I thought, why doesn't Svelte do it like Vue? But I've run into like issues with it, for example, where let's say you're using scope styles and you just put the style like button. If the first component and the child component, like the topmost element is a button, that will be style. But if it's not, it won't. And then you have to remember what's inside the child. It gets a little bit messy. In Svelte, like sure, it can be a little bit harder, but I like these constraints. Vue is really flexible, and I get why some people like it for that, but sometimes it's too flexible for me and I get a little bit lost, right? Another example is with Svelte, you always need to declare what props are passed down. Same with React and a lot of other frameworks. With Vue, that's not the case. And yeah, and now I really am liking Svelte runes. I'm really in love with them, especially after porting my library. Sure, there's some magic behind the scenes, but yeah, I'm really liking the simplicity of it. Yeah, I could go on and on and on and on.
Oh, I totally understand you. I really, really love Svelte, especially even after 5. I thought it was I thought it was really amazing. So before Svelte, I was like a Next.js person. I thought that was great in some ways. And then I discovered Vue, and Vue was really amazing. And finally, a friend recommended Svelte, and I'm like, sure, why not? I should try it out. And I tried it out. I have moved basically all of my projects onto Svelte. It's just so good. I feel like it's got like the best of Vue and Next.js and even more. And you don't really have to, obsess about tiny problems and stuff like that. You can just express yourself properly. You can just code very well, and it's really good. It's very straightforward as well.
Yeah, one thing I like that it's like smaller things. For example, one of the things that I think enamored some people and definitely enamored me was I went to the tutorial and then, hey, we have a transition directive built in. I'm like, that's insane. That's really cool. And some other things that make sense, like, but if you start adding too much things, isn't that going to like bloat the runtime? And no, it's tree shaken away and it's compiled. There's no runtime drain. Sure, each component has a little bit of a runtime, but you don't need to start an application, you don't need like 500 kilobytes of JavaScript and things like that. So I thought that was a nice thing as well.
I guess after a couple of years of using Svelte, you started building MeltUI. Can you tell me, in your own words, what a headless UI library is, why you built MeltUI, and what problem was it trying to solve? Why did you start it, and all of that?
Okay, so a headless UI library, what it is. Let's say you want to use a component library, right, in your project. So you could use Chakra, Bootstrap, whatever. But then you want to customize it, right? Oh, I don't want to use a button for this. I want to use an anchor tag. No, I actually want to put some other styles. It gets a little bit harder to do so. Either the component library exposes these as props to you, but if they don't expose one bit of it, it gets a little bit trickier. Or they still come with a lot of classes that you need to override, and then it gets a little bit messy, right? To make it your own visually speaking. But if you go the other hand, I want to write it from scratch. I want to write a drop down menu from scratch. That gets really hard to do because there's a lot of stuff that you need to consider, accessibility and functionality, and then you need to do it from scratch, and you don't want to do that. I wanted the middle ground, which is a headless UI library. It just gives you the JavaScript, right? The event listeners and stuff like that, and then you can add that to any element and apply any styles. It does not come with styles or elements themselves. Like a true headless library does not come with markup either.
Why did you start MeltUI, and how did that process go?
During my time at Significa, the second company I was in here in Portugal, we really used Radix UI, which is one of the biggest headless libraries in React. We really used it a lot, right? And it was one of my favorite libraries, but there just wasn't something like that in Svelte. There were some projects. There was like headless UI, two of them. There was like Grail UI, but none of them were too complete. Radix had more components. And so I actually started Radix Svelte before MeltUI. I even joined the Svelte hackathon with it. It wasn't the purpose, like, hey, I want to join the Svelte hackathon. Here's Radix Svelte. It was the other way around. Just because I felt the need, right? I felt like, hey, this is something that people need. This is something I need most of all. I want something like that. In CodeVerter, I had built my own select with floating UI and things like that. It was hard to do, like too much of a headache. And yeah, I just wanted to solve my own problems. But Radix Svelte did not work too well. I was using like a component-based approach, which due to the issues I mentioned with like it being harder to style, I don't think it was the right approach. And that's where MeltUI stemmed. Instead of shipping like components, it ships just like a function, and then you can, with attributes and event listeners, which you couple into your elements. So that's why I did MeltUI, because it would be easier to use with the way Svelte does things, right? I think I was trying too hard to port a React library when I could just build my own. I was also a little bit tired of like, hey, if this is a port, I need to do exactly what they do. And I don't agree with everything they do, right? We have two different ways of thinking. And yeah, I wanted to rid myself of that constraint and be a little bit more free.
It's really good. I really love the library. I thought it was really beautiful, and I thought it's pretty efficient as well. So thank you for creating it. It's really amazing. Okay, so like while building MeltUI, what were some problems that you faced? Difficult situations, or it could be technical as well, or management. So what were some hard problems that you faced while building this library?
Several that I still face to this day. I say that when like maintaining an open source library, you become everything. You become a designer, a developer, a writer, a support person, things like that. So dealing with time and burnout is a challenge that I think a lot of people in open source face. But there were a lot of technical problems as well. So we went for a lot of big refactors in Melt just because of the different approaches, right? It's still in beta library, and some approaches we did were a little bit more ambitious in trying to make the syntax more succinct. But there was this basically in Svelte, before Svelte runes, I had to ship both an action and spread attributes. The action would give event listeners, and the attributes are attributes. But I really didn't like that. I wanted it to be a single thing, right? And I was adamant about that. So I used like a really hacky method that you passed in like an ID or identifier to the element. And then in runtime, you would, hey, let's add an event listener based on that ID. But that ID could change due to situations.
And
And
is it even
then
efficient that way?
it wasn't efficient at all. Basically, if you click like too fast, like we didn't manage to do it like with user interactions. But when you're running tests, if there were like two subsequent clicks or something like that, or events that changed the state, the first one would run the other. You'd have to at least wait a little bit, like a set timeout. It could be like 1 millisecond, but you had to. I was like, okay, this is really hacky and poor. Let's not do that. So that had to do a big refactor. We created a preprocessor so that the action and the attributes could be shipped as one. So that was a big refactor. And this is not a problem with Svelte 5 anymore. And another thing that I still struggle with is documentation. Not the writing itself, but keeping like API reference updated, right? So let's say you have a list of props and you change a prop. Now you need to remember to go to every component that depends on that uses that prop and change everything and then write and make sure that the types are right. It's really messy. And that is fixed on the new version of Melt, which is not out yet because the API reference is automatically generated from the types in JS doc. But that was a big problem. And the other one's just like issue upkeep. There's a lot of issues in Melt right now, and there was a time that I was really burned out, and I said, okay, I need to stop a little bit. I need to enjoy life. Let's breathe. And so now Melt has a lot of issues, like almost 100 issues, if not 100. And yeah, not all of them are like bugs. A lot of them are like feature requests. But I'm focusing on the new version of Melt for like feature requests. And so a lot of them are going to close down when the new version comes out. Bugs as well.
Let's talk about the new version and what's upcoming, what's new, and tell us about stuff like that.
Yeah, the new version, basically, first off, it's much simpler. I feel like one problem with Melt was that it was a little bit too complex to use, especially because of some of the constraints that Svelte had before of runes and stuff like that, and passing state in to something that's outside of a component, right? And that's what Rune tries to solve. So we had to ship a lot of things in Melt before to hack around that, and now we just don't. It's much more succinct. So DX-wise, that's much better. There are also some considerations I'm just having all around the board, like of how to make the DX better. And examples like the slider. Since the slider, you can have multiple thumbs, the value could, if you think about it, if it's one thumb, it's a number, and if it's a lot of like thumbs, it's a range slider, right? A range slider, you need an array of numbers. But because of type issues and other things, we would always accept an array, even if there's only one thumb. And that's just awkward to deal with, especially because most of the cases you are dealing with a slider with a single thumb. So it just feels bad, in my opinion. So that's something I'm trying to correct in the new version of Melt. And yeah, I think the DX part of it is the most exciting bit of it. There's also one thing that I'm not quite ready to share yet, but I will later on. But it would just make usage of Melt a little bit easier as well. Basically, right now, with Melt, you kind of need to create a component every time you use a builder if you want to use multiple instances of it, because otherwise it's a little bit harder to use and to use two-way binding and things like that. And with the new version of Melt, that is not going to be so much the case. It's going to be a little bit easier to do that, but I'm not quite ready to share why as of yet. And the documentation is going to be a lot better, as I said, because of automated API reference and things like that. And yeah, I think that's mostly it.
That's actually pretty exciting. Is there like a time frame that you're thinking about? Would it come out this year? Can you tell us anything about that?
So I already have the package name. I already have documentation site set up. I'm aiming to have like a public version, like maybe this month, the next month. So yes, this year, but it will be much reduced. Like when I do release it, it's not going to have all the components that Melt has currently. Even some of them, I'm not thinking of bringing them back. For example, I think the switch component in Melt is needless, for example. I think it's not needed, given it's easy to style like a normal checkbox. Yeah, some components I just think there's no need for. But yeah, it's not going to be the full version as of yet. But that's the time frame more or less.
Okay. I'm actually pretty excited to see the new release.
Yeah, one thing that I started doing too, like just 2 days ago, let's see if I can keep it up, is on Blue Sky and on, I need to put it on Discord too. On the Mount Discord, I'm putting a daily update, kind of to motivate myself on a little bit of progress. So every day I'm trying to do a little bit of it, even if it's a small thing. I want to work every day on it so we get faster to release.
That's awesome. That's good for us. We get to have a new version pretty fast. So I hope you really keep it up.
I hope so.
Apart from you, the other most contributing, I guess, member of MeltUI is HuntaByte. I guess, can you tell us anything about it, how you guys met, how it's like, what it's like working with him and his contributions, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a funny story. Me and Hunter started talking when I was still doing Radix Svelte. And then he started doing ShadCN Svelte, which is his most known project. And yeah, we talked and he started using Radix Svelte for ShadCN Svelte. And then I had a tough conversation like, hey, Hunter, so sorry to burst your bubble. I'm not doing Radix Svelte anymore. I'm doing something entirely new. And she's like, oh, screw you. No, I'm kidding. Hunter is a really kind person. It's like, really? And stuff. But that's when he really started helping. We built MeltUI alongside each other quite a lot. In the start, he helped me with a lot of the big refactors. Hunter was a really big moving piece of Melt, and he eventually created Bits UI, which at the time used Melt on the background. So yeah, we had a lot of tight collaboration in Melt. I did not help with ShadCN Svelte or Bits UI much. We just collaborated together in MeltUI as the backbone. Nowadays, Hunter's not more active anymore too much on MeltUI, because he's dealing with Bits UI no longer for the Svelte 5 version, no longer depends on MeltUI, and by extension, no longer does ShadCN Svelte. But we do collaborate on something called the Svelte system, which is just an organization full of like Svelte packages.
I guess I'm kind of curious to know why you're doing this. Maintaining an open source project, it's not easy. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and so much energy. So why are you doing this? What keeps you going? How do you get motivated, and how do you stay motivated to work on it for years?
Yeah. So why did I do this? It was born out of necessity. Like, I need these things for my own, right? And yeah, I always like doing my little projects and sharing them to the world, even if they didn't get too much attention. And yeah, in this case, it was just something, hey, I need this for myself and I want to share with others. Why not? It even helps me because, well, it helped me a ton. I gained a lot of connections. A lot of people helped me with the project itself, making it easier to solve even my own problems as well. So that's the thing. It also is a really good career boost. It's something like, hey, you're in an interview. Oh, can you tell me some of your experience? Hey, boom, I have an open source library. I maintain it. A lot of people use it. That's a really good example of like showing the work that you've done. And it's public work. When you work at a company, it's a little bit harder to show that work. Sure, some companies carry weight. Oh, I've worked at GitHub. Oh, that carries weight, of course. But still, if you have something that's open source that you built on your own, I think that's I'm not bragging. I'm just saying like, hey, it's something that I know that people value. So there's that. But yeah, it's just like I'm solving problems. Like, I really like the Svelte ecosystem. I want to see it grow. I really, really like Svelte, and I want to continue building Svelte. And I believe like I'm really opinionated about my stuff. Like, there are other good libraries out there. Bits UI is no longer dependent on Melt, and it's great. Zag.js they also have a working Svelte version that's still not out yet, but I just believe mine is better for me. Not I'm saying universally better, but there's a certain way I like to do things, and I want that to be available. And yeah, I think that's it. I do it for myself, and I know that other people like it as well, and I like sharing it. It's important for my career, but I also take great joy in all the connections I've built and all the people that help me. Also wanted to shout out, for example, there is a person called Abderrahman who is already helped quite a lot on the previous version of Melt and is working a lot on the current version. and Hugo, who is also working on like skeleton and other things. Sometimes it helps out with Melt too, even if it's just like giving their opinions and stuff like that. These two have been helping me a lot on the new version of Melt.
That's really cool. I really love it. Um, I guess I try to maintain some open source projects here as well. Sometimes I lose, it's not just me, I guess some people in the community who also have open source projects lose the energy to maintain it and keep it going for years to come. And I was just very curious to know because MeltUI has a big a lot of people depend on it, and
Yeah.
that cannot be the only factor that pushes you to work on it. So there needs to be an initial push from the inside that gets you going. And yeah, I think you told us about that. So it's pretty cool.
One thing to notice, I think it's normal. Like when you start a new project, it's super exciting, right? Like you ideate, and then hey, the idea works, and it's nice, and it's all fun and games. And then comes the hard part. Comes bugs, comes documentation, comes maintaining it. It's gets harder. And I've been there, and especially when people start. There's some really nice people, right? A lot of people helping out and stuff like that. But other people can be a little bit more demanding, and it takes a little bit of a toll on you. I haven't had too much bad experiences with Mouth, fortunately, but still, just a lot of people depend on you. It does take a toll, right? For sure, even if the people are all nice. So it's something that I think it's normal. I think we all need to take care of ourselves and always keep in mind, like, hey, this is open source. It's given, like, we are doing volunteer work, but we're not obligated to do so. Like, don't feel bad if you end up stopping doing it. I don't want to stop, but at the same time, it's not a shame to stop, because open source is a lot of times like work that is not properly valued, let's say, right? Let's say if I could work on Melt full time, I fully would, but open source is hard, especially with Svelte, which is still has a smaller market share than Vue and React. And Melt also is a little bit more niche. Like, it did get a lot of attention, but if I'm going to compare Melt with like a headless React library, it's not going to be comparable in terms of like downloads and usage. So yeah, it's hard to get that support. So I don't think anyone should feel ashamed or bad about themselves for like, hey, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this anymore, because we have things to do. I have my social life, I have my work, and I have my second job, which is Melt.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
It is hard, but I do enjoy it. I like coding, so
that's pretty nice. I guess while working on, how did you launch MeltUI? I'm actually very curious right now. Like, when you're done with maybe the beta version, or the latest version of it, where did you announce it? How did you get people to use it? And how did you get the stars on GitHub and all of that? How did you market it?
It was mostly Twitter, to be honest. So together, this all started last year, right? So last year was the year I said, hey, I want to do stuff and share it to the road and market myself. Maybe get a little following on Twitter. So Twitter was the whole thing. That's where I shared most of my stuff. And then eventually I created, like, once I launched the project, I started building in public without the hashtag. And just sharing it there. And eventually I also shared, like, in the Svelte Discord on like library announcements. There's a channel there. And for subsequent launches, I also marketed it on Melt's Discord. I created a Discord server for Melt. So yeah, that's a lot of the stars also came from Radix Svelte, right? People that migrated over. So that was a thing too. But yeah, Twitter was the majority of them, I would say.
Okay. What's a project that surprised you when people used it? What's a big one that's using MeltUI and that surprised you?
I guess there were maybe SourceGraph is one. SourceGraph is a big company that does LLM stuff besides other things. And I saw on on GitHub, you can see people who are using like what public repositories are using, like your product. So when I saw SourceGraph, like, oh, that's a big one. That was a surprising one. I don't keep too much up to date currently on what companies use it. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, that I would say that's a big one.
Do you have any plans to monetize the project?
Yes, maybe, but I want the core of Melt to always be free. I actually think of like a separate thing that uses Melt. So Melt brings it doesn't bring style. So I'm thinking like something like Tailwind has Tailwind UI, right? Which depends on Helpless UI, if I'm not mistaken, which is just like templates and things like that, like stylizing the components and stuff like that. So maybe that. And there's also the monetization model of AriaKit, which is a React library, which provides some more advanced examples and things like that if you pay a little subscription. But I'm thinking of doing like a one-time fee for like some templates and things like that, maybe later. But it would probably be something separate to Melt, like a different name, right? But still under the same organization.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, I guess. For a beginner, what would you advise for a beginner open source project maintainer or creator? What would be your advice, or your guides for that person? Like, what would you advise a person?
Be careful with expanding your library too fast and creating, like, really ideate on your idea and then ideate more and really nail the API down. Like, be obsessive about it. That's what I'm doing currently with the new version, and it's worth it. And get all of the steps like really all up, really well done. Like auto documentation generation is not that hard. It is a little bit tricky. There's not too much automated things that work too well. But if you had think about the workflow, for example, my workflow for Melt, like the main workflow is building a new component. What does that entail? With the current version, it's a little bit, the current, I mean like the pre-Runes version, it's a little bit hard. I need to create all the files, then I need to also create the documentation for it, the preview and things like that. And the API is a little bit different every time, and the utilities are a bit of a mess, and I had to do a lot of refactors, and writing documentation is a nightmare. And I also had to write the documentation website for MeltUI is custom built, which was a pain to do, and it's not that performant, not because of SvelteKit, just because of our failings. The new version is much simpler. We use Astro Starlight because it's a great documentation tool. So use some tools to make your life easier when you can, and really nail down the API and the workflow. Make the workflow easy. Make it well tested. Just make sure your API is really so like you love that thing and you can't wait to market it, and make it easy to build new stuff on that solid foundation. It's worth it.
Okay, thank you for that advice. I guess both of us love Svelte, and you're way more experienced than me in Svelte. So what would be your least favorite part of Svelte?
I don't know, because the least favorite used to be, a lot of the least favorite things have been fixed. I did not like that Svelte was not based on signals and it was based on static runtime analysis. It did lead to some bugs. That used to be the biggest thing. Nowadays, I don't know. That's a good question. I wish the ecosystem was bigger, but it's getting bigger to the point that I don't miss too much stuff. But about Svelte, the language itself. So one thing they did that I really liked is that a lot of things are now spreadable, right? Like event listeners, you can spread them easily onto an element with props. And so that I like. One thing I don't like is that it's still hard to do that with like transitions and actions and just the custom directives. I think it is something they want to adjust as well, but currently it's still an annoyance. So maybe that. Yeah, maybe that. That, and I would like on SvelteKit to, I like file-based routing. I use it most of the time, but I do admire what, for example, Solid is doing with Solid Start and stuff like that, where it allows you to be more custom with your routing. If you want to use config-based routing, you can. I would like for an easier way to do that in SvelteKit. It's possible to use Svelte with another library to do so, but I never tried that because I do like file-based routing. But yeah, I would like the choice to do it in SvelteKit. I really like the other things SvelteKit does.
So let's move on to you being a Svelte ambassador. What does that really mean? What are your roles? How did that happen? And how does anyone else become one?
So Svelte ambassador doesn't mean that much, to be honest. It just means, as I joked before, that I have a special name on Discord and we have our own ambassadors channel. But what that does also mean, which is kind of cool, like we have a direct line to the maintainer, right? And the maintainers usually discuss stuff with us, like when they have new ideas, new features. They like to get our input on it before they're released to the public. And we just discuss in general about the future of Svelte. For example, with Rune, one of Circle Systems libraries that me and Hunter created. We wanted to follow a specific direction, and we had a lot of discussions with Rich, who disagreed with the direction we were going in. And this matters because as an ambassador, as a community library, like we thought, hey, this library has a chance of becoming big, but I don't want to I don't want people to get used to like a pattern that can be harmful, let's say. So we had a lot of discussions around that. So yeah, that's what mostly being an ambassador means, right? You get a little bit more active, you get direct participation with the maintainers, and normally help out with other stuff as well. For example, Willow, who's an ambassador, like a long-term ambassador and also part of Svelte Science, maybe. They also created they are behind Advent of Svelte, for example. So they help out around on that and also on things like the Svelte Hackathon. And so we also participate in these like side things. Paolo Ricciuti, which is now a maintainer as well too recently, congratulations to him. Before that, he was still helping, like he hosted this week in Svelte together with Enrico and other things. So yeah, we just participate in little things in the community. How I became an ambassador, it was funny. I was supposed to be working, and instead, Svelte 5 had been recently announced, and a lot of people were mad about it because reasons. And I was just on the Svelte 5 main channel, just discussing with people and like trying to debunk some premature ideas. Premature in the sense that I think a lot of people had a gut reaction to Svelte 5, which is normal. And yeah, I was trying to try and explain some things like, hey, this is not React, this is different. Hey, this is why if you think about it this way. I just tried helping out in that sense. And then suddenly I was invited to the ambassador channel. How people normally become ambassadors is we see them being active on the community. Most of them are active in Discord because that's the platform we use to communicate. And I said, we have the ambassadors channel there. So people who are really active and helpful there, of course, you need to be active, but if you're not helpful or kind, right, we don't want that to be representative as well. We want to be welcoming to everyone. So that's also a factor. But also people that are important to the community in one way or another. Hunter, for example, is a big content creator in the Svelte field, besides being an open source maintainer. But I believe he was already an ambassador before that. There's Scott Tolinsky, who's a big Svelte fan, and he's the host of Syntax FM together with Wes. And so that's another reason he's not too active on Discord, but still he's an ambassador because of that. So I guess that's it, right? You make an impact. I believe that me being the creator of Melt was also something that was factored in besides my participation in the Discord community to like be a part of the ambassadors. And I also knew I knew Paolo, I knew Hunter. I believe I had talked to like some ambassadors before as well. So I think that helped. We normally we hold a vote, right? Some ambassador or maintainer says, hey, what do you all think of this person? And if it gets a certain amount of votes and no down votes, like no one saying, hey, maybe not, then we put them in.
Okay. Like how many ambassadors are there right now?
Let's see. I can find it out. Right. Actually, I don't, because I can only see active ones. I don't know. There's a lot. There are, like, if I look right now, there are 7 active ones, but I know there are more people than that. I don't know, maybe
around 20,
10, 15, not more than 20, I guess. I would say even maybe 10, 15 is a good 15 is a good guess, maybe.
All right.
This is not counting maintainers though, or moderators. I would say ambassadors.
There was this, I guess, foundation or organization that you were talking about, and you're with Hunter in this. Can you tell us stuff about that?
Yeah, exactly. Sure. So me and Hunter started it. I didn't start it. It's Hunter's organization. Basically, he started creating some packages for it. So there's FormSnap. There's Pain. No, is it FormSnap the name? I forget. but I believe it is. Yeah, FarmSnap, there's PaintForge. So he wanted to start this thing, right? This organization where there are a lot of like curated Svelte packages. And Rune is where I'm most active in that part. So ecosystem is mostly maintained and organized by Hunter, but yeah, I wasn't directly involved in the creation of it. I was just like aware of it. And Rune, I would say, is my biggest contribution to it. Hunter also maintains Rune, but I would say I'm the more active contributor on Rune. It's been a while since I've done stuff there. I need to go back to it. But yeah, and it's the bigger Svelte system package. Not by a lot, but yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, I guess you've already mentioned it. Can you tell us about Rune?
Yeah, so Rune is basically just a collection of utilities that use runes for Svelte. So the nice thing about runes is that it brings reactivity, the reactivity that was before only in one place in components to everywhere in Svelte, right? And so with this, it's really easy to create like composable utilities that you want to use in your application. Now, a lot of these utilities are things that you would build on your application, but you don't want to do it again. For example, dealing with like the bouncing and the bounced state, dealing with like request animation frame with like, oh, I want to use hotkeys or things like that, right? You know how to build these things normally, but sometimes they're a little bit more complex. You don't want to build them on your own, or yeah, and Rune just ships them for you. They're just a collection of good utilities to use, like really general use utilities that are good for application. Right comparison to that is like React. There are a lot of custom React hooks that people ship in libraries, and there's also the popular library, which was a big inspiration called Vue Use, which has also a collection of what they call composables.
All right, I'm kind of wrapping up my questions. I guess one thing I would like to know is how can people get started contributing to MeltUI?
I would say first off, use it. If you're a user of Melt, you naturally find things that you can contribute to. Sometimes you find that the documentation is wrong. Sometimes you find an issue to a component. Sometimes you wish that a component would have like some extra feature, and discuss about it before, right? Come talk to me on Discord or on GitHub. Gather the feedback from the community. That all helps quite a ton. And then you can get directly involved. I think the best way to get directly involved in open source in general is because you have a need for it, right? Just as I started Melt because of that, when I contribute to open source stuff, it's because I felt like, hey, this is something needs fixing or it can be improved. And yeah, that's the beauty of it. So use Melt if you find something that you want change, you want to be different. Talk about it, and maybe we can do something together.
Awesome. Okay, so let's completely move on to a different part, and let's talk about AI, tools you use, and your editor, your text editor, and stuff like that. So, what's your text editor?
No, I am a NeoVim nerd. I also use these little beautiful things right here. I'm big on ergonomics, so just a funny story. I always was curious about Vim in general. I used VS Code until this year. I started using, and then I started like learning touch typing, right? So typing without looking at the keyboard, and Vim. But because of how constrained the keyboard is, and you stay like this with your wrist kind of like instead of being right, you stay. I had really bad wrist pain. I couldn't work because it would really hurt me. And luckily, I already had ordered these. These are great with Vim. This is my setup, so I use NeoVim with my own custom configuration. I don't like using. There's a lot of like pre-built configurations around with NeoVim, and I don't like using those because then you don't learn how to edit them yourself. And yeah, I do use AI tools. So before in VS Code, I used Copilot mainly. I tried other things like Supermaven, which was really good, and Codium. And now on NeoVim, I think I use Codium. I think that's what I use for my AI assistant. It's similar to Copilot, just an AI assistant. I also use the occasional ChatGPT or Claude when I want to chat more with what I'm using. I've tried the cursor editor, which is really interesting. I think it's a really seamless integration. I haven't tried the new Copilot changes to VS Code because I also dropped out of cursor because I missed using Vim, right? You can use Vim bindings in cursor and VS Code, but they're not as good, in my opinion, just using NeoVim itself, not as fast. And the last one of them, which I need to try out more, but I liked it, is called AIder or Aider. Like, let me write it here in the chat. Yeah, it's similar to, it's similar to Cursor. It's a CLI tool. It can read your whole repository and talk to Cloud. It's a really similar experience. So you can add something and it'll create a whole commit for you, multi-file and stuff like that. You can talk with it. So it's a similar experience to Cursor, but more on demand. So I think it complements well with like, I have Codium for like inline suggestions, which I call like smart autocomplete. And I have AI there for more complex things like, hey, write this test for me. I don't like writing tests.
Are you, I'm guessing you're pro AI, AI advancing and everything.
That's a general statement. I am and I'm not. Like, I am. Yeah. So I am, but I think we need to be cautious. Like, I work at an AI company too. I work at V7 currently, and we have an AI tool called V7 Go. It's basically like a sheet, like a Excel sheet, right? But you can upload files to it. You can then process information. You can use also like you can put URLs that can be scraped, and then you can integrate those with like the AI model of your choice. So I think ChatGPT, I think V7 Go, I think these tools are really cool. But then there are some more like gray areas. For example, AI for image generation is a little bit more of a controversial topic because of terms of copyright and stuff like that. What else? There's also the use of like, hey, training data. We are training AI on data we don't own. It's a little bit shady. I know nothing's going to be done with it, like against it, but it's just a reality. And the thing I'm most worried about is how easy it is to create fake data, right? Like deep fakes and stuff like that. That's already been in the works for a while, but now it's so easy that it worries me, like about misinformation and things like that, and evidence and other things. There's a good TV show, which is a little bit like exaggerated, but still interesting, by BBC, if I'm not mistaken, called The Capture, where it talks about this, about how someone was convicted and the evidence they were using was AI generated. So it was not true. It's not a real story, it's a TV show, but yeah, it shows a little bit of like what happens when reality is kind of faked. So that's a worrying thing. So yeah, I think it's exciting, but yeah, I also think that some people use AI way too much in the sense that not everything needs to be AI based. I think there's a right time to use AI, and I don't think we need to be creating new nuclear generators and stuff to use AI instead of like, hey, let's not burn the planet anymore a little bit maybe. But it's useful. I just think it needs to be what's the expression? There's an expression like if you have a hammer, everything is a nail or something like that. Like AI doesn't need to be the solution for all the problems, but it is a really cool thing. It's really exciting. I do like it.
Okay. Are you one of those people that think, AI does not replace you and will not replace you, I guess?
If I'm talking about me specifically, I mean, yes, at least currently, I'm not that knowledgeable into like how LLM works. I know a little bit, but yeah, but I don't think that the current way, from what I've heard, really not that in deep knowledge. I don't think we're going to reach AGI with the way we're doing things currently. I don't think GPT-10 will be AGI if it uses LLMs. So no, currently, if I think it's possible for AI to reach like AGI levels, maybe, which is a scary thought, but maybe. I think it could be possible. But right now, the way things are heading, no, I'm not worried about AI taking over development and things like that. Because at the same time, things are only cheap now because VCs are footing the bill for us. Once that bubble bursts and AI gets as expensive as it is, and you also need to hire someone to run the AI on top and know how to deal with it and test it, and maybe it's not that effective anymore. Maybe you should just use a person.
Okay, so since you're like a Svelte ambassador and a big Svelte lover, could you say something to the community here to encourage people to use Svelte? It's like, can you preach Svelte to us?
At the end of the day, if you're using Svelte and really like it, you already know all the reasons why you should continue using it. It can be hard for sometimes to find jobs with Svelte, depending. It can be hard to find I want to really work on a project with it, but use it for fun, use it for experimenting, use it on your own side projects, and just do it. If you do use the tools that make you feel comfortable, that, as I said, Svelte is the best tool for me to express myself. And if you try Svelte, try the tutorial. The tutorial for Svelte is amazing, really interactive. If you're like me that likes to learn by doing, which I think is really good in the coding world, try the tutorial, try doing some projects just to learn, even if it's anything else, it's knowledge. And if you like it, then that's the reason you're using it, because you like it. Oh, even if maybe you won't necessarily find a job out of the gate for it, even if you don't know what project to create with it out of the gate, just play around, have fun.
All right, that's pretty awesome. I guess I've finished all of my questions. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about, mention or tell us?
Just, don't take things too seriously. Be kind to one another in these trying times. At the end of the day, it's fine to have our tech takes and stuff like that and discuss. But at the end of the day, it's just tech. Let's all be nice to one another and have fun. Open source is cool. I don't know. And maybe I can give a book recommendation. I'm starting to try and read more books a little bit more often. And a recent one, which I really liked, is called The End of Eternity by Isaac Asimov. It's a really nice time travel-y book, but done in a different way and not too cliche. And I really, really enjoyed it. And
All right, that's so awesome. I guess I'm pretty wrapped up. You're a pretty awesome guest. You're very nice to come on this show and, share your experiences, your thoughts, and your ideas and your advices. We value you and your thoughts and everything you've told us. And thank you so much. You've been such an amazing guest.
Thank you. You're too kind. It was amazing, and you're really welcoming as well. So thank you so much.
All right. Have a wonderful time. Goodbye.